Oh, that's a spicy title right there. But before you hit dislike, real quick, let me tell you something. I don't think the game is bad. Elden Ring is an amazing title, amazing, great game. In fact, in my opinion, it's from like the 12 hours that I put into it, and even after this video, when I'm going to save everything and immediately go right back onto Elden Ring, it might be the best game From Software has made. It's a masterpiece. When I jumped into Dark Souls 1 and got a big grin on my face after I started getting some wins, that's the same feeling I'm having in Elden Ring right now. And you know what? It's an addicting title. And I haven't had an addicting title in quite a long time. Last time I was this enamored by a game was Death Stranding. And if that sounds weird to some, I'm a weird gamer. Now, this game is great, but apparently on the PC, it's gotten such bad ratings, such bad reviews. Given its port quality, people are saying this game stutters harder than Jimmy from South Park. In fact, some people have straight up said they're not going to play the game until everything's all fixed up. Now, I've seen this story a million times, okay? When Batman Arkham Knight came out, people were like, yeah, this game runs like dog shit. Now, I started seeing some takes online, like Dark Viper was saying, like, hey, I got an RTX 3090, I think it's a 3080 or 3090. He has one of the best systems in the world. And all of a sudden, he's suffering issues. So then I got to thinking, if that guy has some of the best hardware money can buy, and he can't run the game, whoa, who else is running the title? So I went to Elden Ring's store page on Steam, and woohoo, 65% have positivity. The rest, negativity. Now, this has actually gotten better. I remember earlier looking into it, and it was at like 60%. So it's gotten way better since then, 5% better. Now, why is it that a game like Elden Ring is facing performance problems on the PC? To get things started, okay, I just want to reiterate for a minute. There's a reason why I made that video a while back, not too long ago, when FF7 PC came out, and I said, this is why I'm not PC gaming anymore. It's because games are expensive. You're paying $70 for a game, okay? $90 with tax Canadian, okay? Things are getting expensive. So when you pay 70 bucks for a game, remember, that's like 2 weeks worth of groceries. Like, if you shop smart, you shop well. That's food money, okay? That's some people, and hey, 70 bucks is a lot of money. So when people put it towards a game, I think that the baseline, it should just work, okay? So when you buy a game on the PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, and the PC, I think the borderline expectation is that it should just work out of the box. You know, games go through a lot of testing, and even in the PC side of the world, it's not like the From Software development team had no idea that the game ran poorly, and they just released it on Steam, and then issued an apology on Steam later and said, you know what, guys? We realized the game doesn't exactly work too well. In fact, I was even on the Steam page, and if we look down over here, a message about some performance issues in Elden Ring. For instance, regarding the problem of the mouse being too sensitive, we'll send out a patch in the near future. Regarding the problem of easy anti-cheat failing to launch when it has a multi-byte character, like kanji, we're aware, and we'll provide a patch in the near future. Bro, that's the home base language. How did it fuck up like that? Regarding the phenomenon of frame rate and other performance-related issues, hey look, we're constantly working to improve the game, and we hope that it can be played comfortably on various PC environments. So, yeah, you know what? The best advice they gave was update your graphic card drivers. Now, listen. Alright, I feel like if you're going to release a game that runs like doo-doo on day one, thank God for the refund system. Gamers can refund if the game don't work too well. And if the game doesn't work too well for you, refund it. Vote with your wallet is all I can say. The reason why I buy games from Software, or really any developer nowadays, on a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox, is simply because you pay the same price for the PC version, yet they will constantly find a way to ass-fuck you in terms of performance, digital rights management, and anti-cheat. Now, in Elden Ring's case, they actually have an anti-cheat, and God bless they do, because, as you know, Dark Souls was kind of a little tizzy to play lately because of a remote code exploit. So they've got an anti-cheat, easy anti-cheat, and, you know, for the most part, it seems to be working well. I don't think there's that many hackers on the PC version. I don't think there really are any at all. But this comes with its own caveats, okay? For instance, let's say you're a Linux gamer like me. Well, with easy anti-cheat, the game may not launch because anti-cheats and Linux are like oil and water. So if you're actually gaming on Linux, one of the things that I can tell you is when you're actually installing it onto your distribution, one thing you can do is right-click, hit Properties, go to Compatibility, force the use of a specific Steam Play compatibility tool, hit Proton Experimental. Then, when you go to your Steam library, type in Proton Experimental, and right over here, you want to just right-click this, hit Properties, and then you want to go to betas, and you want to enable bleeding edge. That gives you all the cool new abilities, okay? And once you've done that, install easy anti-cheat runtime, and hopefully Elden Ring should launch, and it should work just fine underneath Linux. So that's just one quick fix. Now, some of the things that I've been noticing is the stuttering and the frame rate issues. But before we even get into that, one of the things that I wanted to talk about was ultra-wide, okay? Now, you might be watching this video and wondering, Muda, why does your video look thicker than the other YouTubers right now? That's because I use an ultra-wide monitor, okay? We're a proud, industrious gaming people that have super ultra-wide monitors. And the reality of these monitors, I use them for content creation and video editing and just basically programming and things like that. I don't really like to use these mostly for gaming. I have a broad specific use for all these monitors. But when I am gaming, I want you to just visualize what it looks like, okay? So typically when you're playing a game, this is the average person's aspect ratio, okay? 16:9. The way that I game is I get all this extended FOV when I'm gaming. So to me, when I'm playing a single player title, it's like having peripheral vision. It's kind of like that old meme where people took like 3 monitors and stuck them side by side. Now you're able to buy a monitor that does the exact same thing, all in just one solid piece. These are expensive monitors, and frankly, because of their price, not many people buy them, okay? You really have to be blessed to afford these monitors, and I thank God every day that we're getting there. But these monitors are basically like 0.2% of the gaming population. So when a game developer doesn't build their game for an ultra-wide system, does it piss me off? A little bit. But at the same time, I can understand why, okay? Even though it's not the hardest thing in the world for these guys to do. Now that being said, it's not like it's all doom and gloom. There's things like flawless widescreen that you can use to actually game in ultra-wide through Elden Ring, but make sure you disable the anti-cheat before you do so. You don't want to be branded as a dirty VAC cheater on Steam, do you? So one of the things that you want to actually do is you want to go down to the list and you want to actually follow a few steps to remove easy anti-cheat. So for instance, disable EAC in Elden Ring. Go to Steam Library, Steam Apps, Elden Ring Game. Rename startprotectedgame.exe to something else. I added original at the end of the file. You could just add buttplug, to be honest. Make a copy of eldenring.exe. Rename this newly made copy to startprotectedgame.exe. Run the game through Steam as normal. So basically this removes the easy anti-cheat from even initializing, and so now you can put in all your modifications, and now you can play Elden Ring at ultra-wide. See, this game allows you to pick the ultra-wide resolution, yet they fucking add black bars. Why? Again, this is the way Elden Ring should be played for people who have big-ass ultra-wide monitors. Now, let's get to the real meat and potatoes of the experience. Now, this takes us to the next stage of the memery, which is bad PC ports, okay? Now, of course, when a game doesn't have proper ultra-wide support, kind of an issue. Don't get me started. When it has DRM and anti-cheat, not exactly ideal. But when it has FPS and stuttering issues on even the highest end of hardware, that makes me want to investigate just a little bit more. And I feel like we can learn something about why certain games have issues. Now, Elden Ring is part of the newest the newest engine from FromSoft. So the newest engine games typically are Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, even though that's purely PS4, and then you've got Sekiro, and then you've got, Elden Ring. So these are the 4 games that are running on the newest FromSoft engine. Now, the history of From Software ports are not exactly the best. If we just look at Dark Souls 1 back in the day with 30 frames per second limits, even on the PC, you basically needed mods like DS Fix. When a fixed mod has 2.4 million downloads, that's not necessarily a good time. That just means your PC port was so bad the community had to come together to fix it. And that should never be acceptable. Bad PC ports like Dark Souls 1 and GTA 4 should absolutely be condemned. These games should not be purchased for any normal price, because what they sell you is a completely inferior product. Now, of course, things have been getting better. Dark Souls 3 was way better than what Dark Souls 1 was on the PC. But when I loaded up Elden Ring, one of the things that absolutely baffled and shocked me for a minute was the fact that this game still, to this day, does not have PC keyboard and mouse prompts on the game. No, it just gives you Xbox One controller prompts. Look, I know people are going to be like, oh, who plays a Dark Souls game with a keyboard and mouse? That is such a bullshit fucking argument. Why can't you play a PC game with a keyboard and mouse, okay? The default input methods on the PC. Yes, I know you can hook up a controller. You could probably hook up Grandma's vibrator through a USB port to a PC. Doesn't mean that should be an input method required for whatever video game. So when a PC port doesn't have good keyboard mouse input controls or UI stuff, that's a bit negative for me too, and it's something that I wish was absolutely fixed. The fact that they don't even have PlayStation input prompts for people who connect a PlayStation controller on a PC is just baffling. So anyways, I wanted to look into the FPS and stuttering issues. Now, when I read that this was running on a 5950X and a 3090 for some people and they were still having stuttering issues, I want to start off with what my computer specs are, okay? So if I open up a console real quick, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to type in Neofet just to give you a readout of what I have on the system. Now, my CPU is an AMD Ryzen 9 5950X, 32 threads at 3.4 gigahertz. It does boost. And then I've got two GPUs in my system. We're only going to need one. I've got an RTX 3090 and an AMD ATI 6900 XT. I've got 128 gigs of RAM running at abnormally high speeds. So without a shadow of a doubt, this is probably the best computer, one of the best systems you can have to PC game under, okay? I'm sure you can buy a better processor from Intel somewhere for a few $100 extra. I'm sure there's probably you could probably stuff a better graphic card inside these systems, okay? I'm sure there's ways to eke it out, but this is high-end PC gaming. So if I have issues, we're gonna have some problems. Now, the way that I'm actually tabulating this is just by playing the game in the introduction area. So I have things like Mango Hut and Riva Tuner to basically get an FPS readout of the game, and to gauge frame timing, which will actually show me how much stuttering can happen. If the frame rate acts erratically, that is a sign that stuttering is taking place. Stuttering basically means the game is not exactly the smoothest to play. It means every time you input something, it's not running at a consistent, smooth 60 frames per second. It's very obvious for people playing a game to notice the drop from 60 all the way down to 5 frames per second and erratically moving in between there. If you ever played a game on console, for those people that aren't PC gamers, you may notice that a game that is sometimes 60 frames per second may have trouble keeping that frame rate up. You may sometimes feel judder. You may sometimes feel input lag. And that's because the game may not be hitting that 60 frames per second target, which is exactly something that seems to be going on with Elden Ring. What's important for people who want to see this is the readout on the left, where I actually have all the CPUs being calculated and the frame rate, which is at 60. Now, in the introduction area, there's not much being rendered here, so you don't really have to worry. Like, there's not a big open world. You're just basically running in this enclosed section, and it works fine. In this first initial boss battle against Soldier of Godric, I did not notice any frame rate drop whatsoever. So again, when you're in these enclosed areas, the game seems to be working just fine. And that's with the game calculating alpha transparencies, various effects, and whatnot. However, what I start to notice, and a big difference, is when you start to actually leave the area and transition to a new section. So for here, you can actually see the frame rate dip down to like 49 frames. So that's a little stutter. And again, that was when the game was transitioning back to this section of the map. And of course, that's just the introduction. Then you get to first step, which is where the game finally opens up into the open world section of the map. And here, even traversal was fine. Every time you see it dip down to 59, 58 frames, I don't think that's necessarily a stutter. I think that's just par for the course. That's something that tends to happen really in most open world games. So I'm not going to give Elden Ring too much shit for that. However, the frame rate is going down to like 57. That said, though, we are gaming at a really high resolution. So again, little margins of errors can happen, and these wouldn't really be stutters. I wanted to really extremely check this and get a bunch of enemies on the screen and see how hard it would stutter too. And it was dipping down to 57 frames per second, but it was still relatively smooth. It wasn't like a big lurch that I was expecting, right? Again, the enemies killed me, I died, and one thing you can really notice is when you're traversing through this open world, you'll notice those lurches, like here at 55 frames per second. When you're entering a new location, the game is like reloading in assets. And again, I'm getting attacked over here. This is not where the frame rate dips are happening. Again, it's not the fact that we've got enemies and CPU logic going around. We have plenty of headroom there. What's happening is something in the actual loading, something in the streaming engine is kind of causing an issue as far as I've been able to tell. And now here you can even see that it's staying at a very solid 60 frames. Like, yeah, now it's dipping down to 56, 57. Yeah, the performance is not perfect. There are actually abnormally more dips than you would expect. But this is where you're about to see it get really, really bad. And I think something to do with maybe shader calculation or the fact that we're actually entering a new area. When I make a turn right here into the first little cabin out by Stormhill, you're going to start to see the FPS dip down to like 34 frames, 33 for a little bit, and then it goes all the way back up. So clearly there's something in that streaming engine that's causing issues. Even here, when I died, when I was respawning, because of the ultra-wide, you can actually see the game load up the world as, you can actually see it load up in real time. So it's loading up the geometry texture work. Here, the frame rate dips down to 47, 50 frames, 30 sometimes, but that's because it's loading in new assets again. So again, it purely seems like something to do with the entire streaming engine, because once everything is loaded and ready to go, the game barely goes under 60 frames per second or 59. Here, another hit just happened, 39 frames. Again, I don't exactly know why this is happening. Something to do with the streaming is causing the issues, and it's going to happen again once we get right into the castle by the next Lost Grace. So once I run by these people, okay, again, purely 60, just totally fine. Once we get into this section, it's going to dip as soon as we make a turn for that little Lost Grace. So right around here, yeah, right there, you just saw it. That's the kind of performance you're going to be expecting, and this is on the best hardware. The Windows installation that I'm using is very new. I think it's only a few weeks old, and the only other game that I played on this system was like Rainbow Six Siege. So this is not normal. This is not okay, and this definitely needs an update. Even for battles where I was fighting against Margit, it was holding up against 60 frames just fine. The only time it ever really dips is maybe down to like 58, 59 frames. But again, that's in my margin of error. So there is something going on with the streaming engine. And if you're on the PlayStation console, you can even see this for yourself too. Every time you sort of teleport into a new location, it's always loading up the ground, grass, and everything really quickly. So again, this game is streaming in assets in a weird way that just is not efficient enough. So if you're going to play Elden Ring, okay, if you have to play it and you have a console, preferably even a next generation current gen system like the PS5 or the Series X or S, get it there, okay? Because currently the PC version needs some patches, okay? They've acknowledged their issues and they need some patches. And this again baffles me because, ladies and gentlemen, you're paying $70 to play a game that still has some inferiority to it, okay? $70 to get a game that, frankly, is not complete from a technical sense. And the review bombing that's happening on the PC doesn't even take into account that the game itself is actually good. It's just game developers over here have decided to give an inferior technical product to the PC platform. So yeah, it sucks. It sucks that the reviews for the games are based purely on the fact that it has stuttering issues, which hopefully should be patched out, and not the actual quality of the game itself. It's frustrating to cover. It's frustrating to talk about. But it is what it is. Negative reviews for day one teething problems. What if we become? Yeah, there are performance issues for some, and yeah, it's not absolutely buttery smooth, but it's literally launch day. Name the last game of this scale to be released without teething problems. It should not be acceptable for a game on launch day to have issues like this. I understand day one patches are a thing. I get it, games are getting larger. But then don't fucking sell a game for $70 blatantly and expect people not to call out these issues, okay? If this is a free-to-play game, sure, I could understand that, but it's a $70 purchase, and for some people, $70, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to be spending on luxuries and entertainment for them. So don't condescend and talk like that. So two of the fixes that I've noticed that may actually do things if you're on a PC is to enable things like XMP, which is Extreme Memory Profile, in your computer BIOS, just to make sure that your RAM is tuned the best that it can be. Because apparently that will actually have an actual tangible effect on the stuttering. So if that doesn't fix things for you, the other way is to go into your Windows settings and make sure that Windows is actually running Elden Ring with the performance graphic mode, okay? Basically, it's picking the actual graphic card instead of anything integrated on your system, if that's a thing that's going to happen onto your system. So again, there's two fixes, as far as I know, that are going to actually work. don't run the game as administrator mode because it's not really going to do anything. You shouldn't really run anything as an administrator unless you trust that specific program. And that's pretty much what it goes down to, okay? Fucking around with the game's compatibility settings is not actually going to make any difference, specifically regarding a game that's built for modern systems in mind. So again, there's two fixes, okay? The XMP and basically making sure Windows 10 or 11 runs the game using the actual discrete graphic card completely over letting Windows decide, okay? The other thing is update your graphic drivers, okay? And hey, listen, be honest, if you don't have the best system in the world, it may literally be your system that's failing to run the game at its spec. This is a next generation game, all right? It's got advanced graphical features. You're gonna have some issues going forward if you don't have the hardware up to snuff. It is what it is. But I guess as far as the PC port nonsense goes is that, listen, even beyond the, FPS and the stuttering, the fact that ultra-wide still is treated as a third-class citizen, and the fact that just the UI itself is geared still more towards controller, given the fact that this is still a PC game, and remember, there are PC ports out there that are spectacularly great. For instance, Grand Theft Auto 5 renders a lot of interesting, unique assets. It does a lot of back-end processing, and as far as I can tell, as far as I've experienced, it's one of the better PC ports that exist. Games like Death Stranding exist on the PC from developers, talented developers that have designed a game from the ground up to run on the PC. A game that typically has heavy analog console and trigger usage runs relatively very well on a keyboard and mouse. So again, this is really FromSoft needing to up their game when it comes to releasing a title on a PC. But yeah, I wanted to cover this because it was interesting to me, and I really wanted to, just give my take on it and sort of really help teach you guys why certain things like this happen, really what's the real issue, at least from what I've noticed. And hopefully From Software can fix this and people can play an absolutely jaw-dropping 10 out of 10 game, because I frankly get really mad when I start to see these games get terrible reviews, not for the quality of the game itself, but for technical issues that hopefully should be patched out, and frankly should have been patched out before the game was ever put up for release. But hey, you know what? It is what it is. Light a fire under the developer's ass and make sure that this thing actually, make sure that the people who are paying $70 to play a game actually get to play the game that they paid for. So yeah, this is me, Muda, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.